It feels like a slap.
Well, Grzegorz, I really like that you raised the level of our film production with this one humble slap. Hi.
Hi.
What was your first motorcycle? I always start with this.
My first motorcycle was a Junak.
Okay, otherwise, sorry, stop. Junak. But what was your first dream? Where did motorcycles come from anyway? Let's start with this.
I don't remember the exact moment, but it seems to me that it was a natural path. As a consequence of the fact that I spent my childhood cycling with my friends and I simply did not use public transport properly in my life, I rode my bike everywhere, spent every vacation on my bike, and so on and so on. And I think that somehow it just evolved, and at some point I mentioned to my parents that I dreamed of having a motorcycle, to which they said absolutely not, over their dead bodies, and there was no way it would happen. So with the pocket money I had saved up here and there, mowing lawns and so on, I secretly bought a Junak M10 with a sidecar against their wishes and kept it hidden at a friend's place where I would ride it. Unfortunately, without a driver's license, because I was under 16 at the time, probably wearing my dad's sheepskin coat, scarf, and some weird helmet. I have no idea where it came from. So that was my first motorcycle.
It's amazing how similar the stories of many Polish motorcyclists are, and the secret purchase hidden from parents.
Yeah.
And riding without a license, I estimate that about 30% of motorcyclists in Poland have a very similar story to ours, actually.
Unfortunately, I only got my license a little over a dozen years ago. About 12 years ago, my sister motivated me, big shout out to her, because she was the first to get hers. I thought, damn, I should really get on that too.
You mentioned it was a Junak. Obviously, it was more about fixing it than riding it. What was your motorcycle, the one that actually let you ride?
Right? Here I have to say thank you again. This time, I want to thank my daughter, Oja, who was about to be born. Well, she was born over 9 years ago, and when my wife was pregnant, I thought, damn, soon everything will revolve around the kids and so on. So I want to do something for myself while I still have some money set aside and fulfill that childhood dream of mine. So I bought a motorcycle for everyday riding. And then I chose the Triumph Bonneville, which for me is an icon, classic among European motorcycles. It's kind of like a Junak, but
Works, doesn't leak oil.
a little less prone to breakdowns, actually very reliable.
All right, but as you said, you managed to fulfill your passion. So you had the money for that motorcycle, meaning you were working, you weren't professionally involved with motorcycles at first. You're from the film industry, right?
Yes, absolutely. I'm a cinematographer, a graduate of the Łódź Film School, which basically means I'm an aesthete. I also did various other things related to visual arts. So when I bought that motorcycle, and my mom is an architect, and my dad has always been able to create all sorts of things too. In fact, he still makes beautiful things out of wood. And that motorcycle didn't look the way I wanted it to, so I started removing everything that its previous German owner had put on it. Literally everything you could possibly buy as an accessory was on it. And back then, hardly anyone, actually, definitely no one in Poland knew what a cafe racer was. At least among my friends, it was a complete novelty. And I would look around and see how cool it was to rebuild a motorcycle like that. So I started doing it in my home garage. At that time, I was working on my feature film debut. So my job mainly involved sitting in front of a computer, writing the script, pitching, and attending some meetings. So doing hands-on work in the garage, something you could actually see and touch, was a completely different experience. Plus there were sparks flying, and in the end you could actually ride that motorcycle. It was a really great escape. And so I built my dream motorcycle, and it turned out that wherever I parked it, when I came back to ride off, someone would be waiting for me, at the very least asking what it was, where I got it, and so on. The other half of the people waiting actually wanted to buy it from me I said I wouldn't sell it because it was my dream bike. But then another winter was coming, and one day I thought, well, I've built my own and now I'm gonna get bored. So I told one gentleman, maybe I won't sell you this one, but maybe I could build one for you. And then there was a flood of inquiries and word spread that something like this was possible here. So at some point I thought, okay, maybe I'll make one big film every few years. And in the meantime, I'll work on these motorcycles. However, it turned out that I wasn't able to fully dedicate myself to either one or the other, and I felt bad about it. So I've already traveled enough around the world. I've gotten to know the show business world, and I thought that maybe now a workshop, a stationary place where I go to work every morning would be something nice. And it really is something nice, actually. I'm happy with this choice. I don't regret it. And by the way, there's something about how these passions accumulate. When we finish this unique motorcycle, I photograph these machines. I also dream of doing some productions. I mean, film productions, more narrative driven ones. Maybe someday, maybe over time it will happen. But when I can photograph our creation, those two passions, so to speak, find fulfillment.
What year was that winter you mentioned? When you came up with the idea that you could build a second motorcycle like that?
That must have been approximately around the year 2012.
So roughly 9 years, and right away a unique piece. In the beginning, it was just you, Grzegorz Korczak, tinkering in the garage. Did you immediately come up with the idea that it would be something unique, that it would be a workshop, or did you already have the current shape of the place in mind from the start?
I don't remember exactly when or how much later I came up with the name. But once I made the decision that I was going to do this, I started looking for a name pretty quickly. I think it was around 2013 or 2014 that the name appeared. Since then, we've been operating under that name Mate. First was just me and a friend. Then Kuba joined us. At that time, he knew how to weld, while I still didn't. And over the following years, more people joined, used motorcyclists, as well as those who are mechanics and, in our case, excellent metal workers. They started reaching out themselves, saying they wanted to co-create these machines with us. So right now, for the past 3 years, I've had this unchanging dream, team truly outstanding, well-known mechanics and metal workers from Lower Silesia. So right now there are already 7 of us, and I have to say it's a really great team.
I may not be an expert in customs, but inevitably I meet a lot of people. And I've noticed that there are, I don't know if there are 2 schools of thought, or maybe not exactly trends, but definitely 2 ways of building, let's call it, a business around customs. What I see on one hand are people who just sit in their garage and do everything themselves from A to Z, and these projects stretch out over many, many years. But what I see here is a professional company, right? I take it you specifically built this facility for this purpose, right? For this purpose, it's a well-coordinated team, workstations. It really looks like, well, like a business. Did you know it would look like this?
I honestly don't think I ever truly imagined that we would eventually have such a truly beautiful and expansive facility. And I certainly didn't have any fixed or rigid vision for its development. However, I absolutely never accepted shoddy work or the practice of cutting corners in any aspect of the project. Also in filmmaking, whether alone or with colleagues, we always push things to reach some dreamed of ideal, no matter how much work and time it took. And here with the guys, we've repeated to ourselves several times that we're not just building motorcycles, we're really building a brand, and we want quality to stand behind that brand. And many times it happened that we budgeted the project for, say, 50 man hours, and it turned out that it was unrealistic to get it done in that time. And for example, we had to put in another 20 or 30 hours to really finish it properly. And I didn't want to raise the price for the client compared to what we had agreed on. So we resolutely gritted our teeth and uncompromisingly pushed the entire project through to make absolutely sure that nothing whatsoever would break off or fall apart during its extensive use, and that the highest quality was indeed delivered. Thanks to that unwavering commitment, we are still very much in the market today because a significant number of companies just like ours were founded, I don't know, perhaps 5, 6, 7, or even 3 years ago. Very few. And actually, I would say that when it comes to such affairs and failures and Cranberry, only one team in Poland has really survived the test of time. And that's exactly it. We keep working all the time to make sure our clients trust us. We don't do things halfway because after all, this is a motorcycle and it should be safe. I'm a father of 2 myself and we all ride these bikes, test them, and I don't want to get myself killed, nor do I want anything to happen to any of our clients. Also, what matters is what's underneath, what you can't see. If this motorcycle goes out into the world somewhere, I don't want to be ashamed of how the wiring is done. In fact, an electrician who takes off the tank or the seat somewhere should have a clear idea of what is where and why. So no shoddy work whatsoever. As a result, it's also a time-consuming and expensive process because it's like inventing the motorcycle from scratch, almost like prefabrication. Then comes refining those ideas, looking for solutions that are aesthetic, safe, and also not ultimately astronomically expensive. Because in a sense, anything is possible, so to speak. We have access to technology like NASA, but then things really do get astronomically expensive. So we try to find the golden mean, and somehow we manage.
The motorcycle industry in our country is not one of the easiest because of seasonality and so on. And in my opinion, from what I see, the Polish customer can also be very demanding. Is that some kind of challenge? Because here, in theory and in practice, you are building someone's dreams, making them come true. We know that people can be very picky, even in a showroom where you actually have standard products, especially when it comes to configuration. Here, well, there really is no limit when it comes to configuration, right? Undone creation. What is the biggest challenge for you when it comes to customer service? Or maybe it turns out that foreign clients are less demanding. What are your observations after all these years? What is the biggest challenge here in a workshop like this?
Indeed, there are clients who want things done quickly, with quality, quickly and cheaply, but you just can't have all three at once. Those who understand that this takes time for us, the most important thing is that we have all the tools. We just need time to make it all a reality. This, in turn, affects the client's budget. So those clients who already know that this really takes time have very different approaches to it. Some already have several motorcycles, I don't know, for everyday riding or for expeditions. And this cafe racer or scrambler is just another variation. So they're not in a hurry because they already have something to ride. And they want this one to be made above all without compromise, without any flaws or anything like that. And some people have a very specific vision, even down to the exact shade of leather, the stitching pattern, and certain details. Sometimes they have a reference, although as a rule, we don't make copies of anything. Literally only once, for a gentleman from France, we made something that he basically wanted to be a copy, but even then we improved certain things that I thought could be done better. Others, on the other hand, say, okay, I want, a Honda from the 80s. I drive that kind of car. I listen to that kind of music. Sometimes it's really nice. They invite you to their home. Come see what my interior looks like and what I like. I'm giving you complete creative freedom. I trust you. Do the best you can do it as well as possible within this budget. And that's actually a real challenge because then, so to speak, I can't blame it on, the client wanting a yellow and pink finish and it not working. But everything, the whole responsibility rests on us. And those kinds of projects are really great because we have a certain amount of creative freedom. But I would say that in most cases, it's more of a collaboration. That is, the client shows us a number of motorcycles that they like. And then we also prepare visualizations with us. You can order based either on your own specific motorcycle or on some studio photos from the internet, photorealistic designs, visualizations. Where can we? Well, pretty much anything. Actually, this is where my skills from my previous job really come in handy because I'm able to do this. And at first I send, I don't know, 5 to 10 versions. The clients then choose the one they like the most, but usually we still change something and we keep bouncing ideas back and forth until someone finally says, yes, this is what the motorcycle of my dreams looks like. And they really are happy with how it turns out. Then my colleague Michał and I sit down literally for a good few days with Excel, and we just imagine everything, all the steps that need to be done. We have Excel sheets prepared, listing everything changeable on the motorcycle. We check things off, call potential subcontractors or find parts globally. So it takes us a good few days to put together such a budget, often in 2 versions. A dream version with no compromises, everything top of the line, or a more optimal version, let's say. And then again, we sit down with the client either directly here or online. Lately, most often all of this happens online. And we find that golden middle ground. We sign a contract where both of these documents are attached as annexes. So both the client and we have the sense that we're working towards the same goal and that there won't be any disappointments. And knock on wood, over all these years, there hasn't been a situation where someone was disappointed. In fact, they're super positively surprised that the motorcycle actually looks even better in real life than it did in the visualization. So we've had some really great reactions here, including tears of emotion and lots of joy. And during those first years, when we still didn't have that Excel spreadsheet, and I thought, I don't know that you could do this for 15,000, but it turned out it should really cost 30. And in short, we weren't making any money on it. In fact, we were actually putting money into it. Well, the client's reactions were the compensation that made you want to keep going and keep doing it, because
You just have to make an Excel sheet.
well, now we finally have that Excel and we can stand by it. We sign off on it. We know that everything is realistic and that's how it's going to be.
That speaks to me because that's professional, right? Because both the Excel and above all the contract. I guess that allows us to work with new motorcycles, because I can see you have a huge range since you've worked on 125S, big bikes, adventure bikes, enduros, road bikes, and sport bikes. But what interests me more is, just briefly, roughly how many motorcycles leave your shop each year on average?
We've never actually counted that. People often ask us about it, but I would say
Taking a guess.
somewhere around 20, about 20, because it's also,
Yes.
some of them are very serious projects that take a year to complete. If it's, I don't know, equipment from the 70s and the only original part left is the engine, then it can take about that long. And in the meantime, we do light, small facelifts on new motorcycles where we change the paint, upholstery, turn signals, and so on. So counting those minor ones, there would probably be about 30 of them. For sure, on our website, you can already see over 100 machines that are truly unique. You really won't find another one like it.
And what percentage of those 20 or 30 motorcycles that say are new machines, and how many are used machines? Are people starting to customize motorcycles straight from the dealership?
Yes. When we started, actually, all of them were old, used, and of varying ages. But now, more and more often, we get motorcycles with 0 mileage delivered to us straight from the dealership, and it's faster to work on them because we don't have to fix anything. In the end, it turns out that if an old motorcycle that's 40 or 50 years old is supposed to work like new and look like new, meaning every part has to be taken apart, sandblasted, new coatings applied, whether it's chrome or paint and so on and so forth.
And the mechanics?
The mechanics and so on and so on. So even well, executive building something from scratch at some point, and the mechanics are just the mechanics. However, on top of that, there's the process of inventing and designing the motorcycle all over again, creating a new motorcycle almost from scratch is, all things considered, more expensive than buying a new motorcycle from a dealership, which is simply produced in millions of units. So more and more often we have new motorcycles which have their own advantages. They also have some drawbacks related to the amount of electronics, which at times can limit us in some way, but I think that's also just a matter of time. However, at this moment, I would say that the ratio of old to new is starting to be about 50-50.
Exactly. What we see, what we've been observing today, among other things, are custom accessories for the BMW R18, a motorcycle that has just come out. We saw its concept, and everyone went crazy over this machine. The final showroom product is still a spectacular machine, but it's a bit removed from the concept, and you brought that concept back. And now you're actually starting to offer, well, a production, though it's hard to really call it mass production.
Handcrafted production.
Yes, but something you can, there's a catalog, and you can just buy it, right?
It's true that when I got on the demonstration model, the 18-wheeler, it had, for example, that really big, the startup sequence, where it significantly rocks and vibrates.
Foot down.
And at first, everyone is a bit scared, but then a smile appears. And overall, the design of this motorcycle makes it so you can say has that something that a lot of new motorcycles just don't have, that soul we long for when it comes to those old bikes. It has that something. But indeed, probably for various reasons, including financial results, it doesn't look like that concept.
Also, just practicality.
Yes, practicality too. Nevertheless, our client Dominic said that he would like to bring that concept, which BMW proposed, so to speak, to the road, and even in a sense refine whatever can be refined, make it even more exclusive, to really elevate it. And indeed, I think we made some very interesting exhausts for this motorcycle, which can come in either a chrome version or in black ceramic. In short, it's an extremely complicated shape. So for a metal worker, making such a set literally takes 100 man-hours to turn a piece of flat sheet metal into something that goes from an oval cross-section to a kind of hexagon, then beveled at an angle, and so on and so forth. So anyone who works with metal knows that this isn't just a press and a conveyor belt. This isn't just a press and a conveyor belt. I know why all the other tuning companies make mufflers with a circular cross-section, because it's just a million times easier. However, but here again, Dominic, the client, was uncompromising, and that's also fantastic that sometimes these clients challenge us. They say, no, let's just see it through to the end. Let's do it without any compromise, and I'm extremely grateful to him for that. We also created a bobber-style seat for this motorcycle, which, for example, has adjustable angle and distance from the foot pegs. As far as I know, no one else on the market offers this. Everything is designed so that you just need to unscrew the original part and attach this one. The process is reversible. We don't interfere with the frame. We also have a side-mounted license plate holder, which in my opinion is more aesthetically pleasing and consistent with the whole line of somewhat Art Nouveau inspired design.
So does that mean these are unique accessories? Because then the motorcycle will already have unique accessories, and it won't be one of a kind anymore. Since you might come across 3 such motorcycles, right? In theory.
Theoretically. However, for example, these exhausts are so complex in their design that you basically couldn't make them on a machine. You'd have to launch a massive production line with robots.
To make it one-to-one?
To make it truly one-to-one. So they are all signed, marked with a consecutive production number, because only the third housing fits with the third tip. That's why these sets are numbered. And we definitely have this intention that in the end, no one will ever come across a motorcycle exactly like the very first one we made. By the way, Dominic, for example, has a beautiful detail on his engineer product barcode that is meaningful to him and his company. And that alone already defines his as unique, his one and only. However, there is still so much room for variation and so many options that I don't think
you'll ever come across 2 identical machines. But when it comes to the field of kits for rebuilding motorcycles, personally I like it, because you can have something much more unique than a motorcycle that's just equipped with accessories from the dealership. Still, the process of building such a motorcycle is more personal. It's not like you have to go through a bunch of meetings, plan out the budget, and then wait a long time for the motorcycle. But with these kits, okay, it's not an original BMW accessory, but it will fit perfectly one-to-one, because it was designed specifically for that purpose. That appeals to me in the sense that, okay, I have a wider range of options. And how many of these kits did I mention, even for the 310R poster. You even made kits for those kinds of motorcycles?
In this case, we actually came up with the idea of making a kit. However, it turned out that, again, we made such a wild design that producing this set of two mufflers hanging under the tail and the entire exhaust manifold costs half the price of the motorcycle itself. So we made this prototype and never again any...
Maybe you got a little carried away?
Yes. However, here the proportion of this set to the price of the motorcycle is completely different. And I would say it's like jewelry for this motorcycle. And for me, the sound of the motorcycle is quite an important aspect. I don't like loud straight pipe exhaust that...
Sound, not noise.
Yes, the sound, not the noise. I don't want to wake up the neighbors or scare the kids. But that deep bassy rumble really does it for me and gives the impression that the fun engages many, many senses, that riding activates a lot of senses. And these exhausts really sounded like that for all those years. Also, thanks to talking with friends who are musicians and acousticians, we learned how to build exhausts so that even 125 can sound really cool and bassy. These exhausts have that something... By the way, I'll share a recording with you. I put the phone in my backpack, so you'll be able to listen to this motorcycle. It really does the job. It has, so to speak, that sporty rumble.
Your type of motorcycle. We're not talking about necessarily the brand, the model, whether it's a cafe racer, a bobber, or a scrambler anymore, right? What's yours?
I'm generally a minimalist, so the less there is on the motorcycle, the better for me.
Chopper?
I don't go on long trips either. I really like just riding around the city and getting around it quickly. Wrocław used to be terribly congested, and that was one of the reasons to buy a motorcycle. So practically speaking, a narrow handlebar, no fairings at all. So even at 140, you really feel the wind and you don't need to go much faster. But I do like to accelerate dynamically and brake dynamically, so I like it to have good brakes. Well, it has to stir up emotion, so it's also like when you get on that older machine, which maybe doesn't have that much power or such great brakes, but, you know, and it doesn't have ABS or other systems, so the ride is more dangerous, and those emotions come up as well. The vibrations, everything is just more raw, so I like that rawness.